And as I stood there, I saw a family of ghosts appear and look at me.
I heard footsteps coming up the steps and coming straight into the room. And right in my ear, I heard, Susan.
I'm a Brunswicker. I've lived most corners of the province, you know, moving around with family. But my place of habitation, so to speak, as a child was on the lower Water Street, which basically exits Chatham. The house that we lived in, I got a sense from it that it was a fairly scary place. It was isolated among the other houses in the area. It had all the creaks and groans of a house that suggested the presence of something else.
Strange lights, eerie voices, phantoms lurking among the gravestones. There are a million ghost stories set in cemeteries. But what if graves are disturbed? Could that bring the dead back to life? And could their spirits make their way from the graveyard into the living room of an unsuspecting local resident? Hello, I'm Lawrence Chow. Today on Ghostly Encounters, we meet Dan and Susan. Both have lived close to grave sites steeped in Canadian history. Growing up on the Miramichi River, young Dan Pond knows all about Middle Island across the water from his house. It's just boring history to a small boy, until the terrifying night when boring history finds its way into his home.
The proximity of the house in Lower Chatham was just up the shoreline from Middle Island. Geographically, we were very close, and we were one of the few houses overlooking the island. Middle Island is basically, it's a 16-acre island, and ended up in the early part of the 1800s used for a quarantine for the Irish immigrants. A year or two after the potato famine, in 1846, there was something like 10,000 immigrants landed in New Brunswick alone. Ships that were overcrowded with people that were sick in travel and became sick, and typhoid fever and cholera sprang up. The death toll would rise as the immigrant population increased. I had an experience, a ghost experience. It was something that I basically discovered 25 years later. I had a recall, and it was prompted by a radio program. I was traveling in my car. I tuned into the CBC radio program speaking about a collection of reports that people have had on ghosts. Something very profound came to light as I was listening to these facts unfolding. And it was at that moment that I actually had the recall. I became very, very frightened. I sat on the side of the road in my car for what must have been, I would think, about 20 minutes so that I could get over this feeling. And at that moment, it was a profound moment in my life where I relived, I saw exactly what I saw 25 years earlier. I saw the ghosts. As a child, I woke up, I would routinely crawl into bed with Mom and Dad, or say, you know, get them to take me to the washroom. So I'm standing in the doorway, you know, getting my eyes adjusted to the light, and I glance over to the right, which was where my parents' bedroom was, I experienced a veil of light, a long trail of light just flew by me down the hallway and ended up disappearing to the right into the front living room. And as I stood there, I saw a family of ghosts appear and look at me. I can say to you, I've never been more frightened in my life. I saw a little girl. I saw a mother figure. I saw a father figure, and I'm standing there in a state of shock looking at them. I can't do anything. I can't even speak. My mouth is wide open, and I'm trying to say mommy, daddy, or something. I'm trying to make a noise, but I can't. There is a sense of a lack of something in the air, something missing, something extra silent. I call it the dead silence. And as I'm standing there, they, in unison, came towards me in a jerky, almost hopping, stroboscopic type movement. You know, as being a little person, that they were scary. They were very erratic. They seemed to be very curious. Perhaps at that point, the curiosity looked like aggression to me. And I couldn't move my legs. I was frozen. The father figure came towards me very close and was very much open postured with hands that spread in a gesture that suggested he wanted to pick me up. I basically went into the state of shock so far that I don't recall anything after that approach. When I finally woke up in the morning, I somehow made myself back to my bed, crawled in my bed. My mother said, "What's wrong, Dan?" And I said, "Mommy, I saw a ghost." She says, "Oh, there's no such thing as ghosts." So for a long time, I never thought about it. I never thought about it. I think as a child in that house in its proximity to Middle Island and the experience that I had, I would not doubt that there was a transference of human spirituality. The literature that I read about this island, that they had people buried there. People died there, people buried there. The upper end of the island, the ice in the spring used to scrape the top of the island. There were actual human remains washing up and being unearthed from graves, unmarked graves of the Irish immigrants. I think there's a very strong link between disturbing a grave and what I experienced as a child in that house. I can say to you, I have never, ever been more frightened. And I got the shiver going on right again. I've never been more frightened in my life. To think about it again, I can still get a feeling of fright.
Dan was terrified. However, the ghosts in his story weren't threatening, just curious. Our expert, Dr. David Reed, suggests a spirit whose grave has been disturbed might not know what's going on. It might be confused and curious to find out where it is and what's around it. Of course, to a little boy alone in the dark, any ghost is a scary ghost. Middle Island marks the spot of a tragedy. The premature deaths of many unfortunate Irish immigrants. With their rich history, Canada's maritime provinces have many sites with stories of horrific events. In Halifax, for example, there are markers all over the city to commemorate one of the world's great disasters, the Halifax explosion. One of them is a grave site for some of the 2,000 killed, and Susan Gorell lives right next door.
I've been living in Halifax now for 35 years. I live in a tiny little house. It's very comfortable, it's small, it's cozy, and it's not very far from a graveyard where the unidentified are buried from the Halifax explosion. It was 1917 when it happened. Two ships collided. There was a lot of people that got killed. It was horrific, from what I've read. I got a little upset because they decided to put up an apartment building right beside the graveyard, and they started digging beside the cemetery. That's when all the weirdness started to happen. The scariness. There is a lot of people buried in there. And I think myself, a lot of people are not resting in there. They're not being respected. And I think they're angry. That land should never have been touched. I've never experienced anything like this before in my life. It was in the evening. This was about 11 o'clock at night. I just didn't have a good feeling that night. I didn't, it felt like really different that evening. Then I heard, and Tom heard, footsteps going straight upstairs and going into the right-hand bedroom. I could tell for sure it's a male. The footsteps are very distinctive, and it sounded like somebody, like they were pacing. I said, "Do you hear that?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Well, I said, there's something up there." I said, "You got to get up there and have a look." Then I heard footsteps going straight upstairs and going into the right-hand bedroom. I said, "There's something up there." I said, "You got to get up there and have a look." He actually got out of bed, went up there. He said, "My heart was racing, and it wouldn't stop racing." And he said, "I know somebody was watching me." I said, "Wow." Every night, every single night, you can hear it. You'll hear something every night. If they dug more, the sounds got louder, there would be more activity. I don't mind guests, human guests, per se, but it does, get a little scary at times. If Tom would be out, I'd stay upstairs. I'd keep all the lights on. And it doesn't matter if the lights are on or not, because you could feel it if there's somebody watching you. You could just feel that, there's somebody else in that room with you. So I'd call him up. I'd actually disturb the poor man and say, "When are you coming home?" And I'd tell him, all night I felt the same thing. And it's very uncomfortable. I was laying in bed, I was getting drowsy. Tom's out watching his shows. I think I'm gonna, bed down for the night, and I'm gonna call it quits. So I turned the light off. I heard footsteps coming up the steps and coming straight into the room, and right in my ear, I heard, "Susan." I said, "That's not Tommy." I kept listening, and then she said it again, "Susan," and then disappeared very quick. Nobody was in the room. No one. I said, "Wow." I just put my head down and I pulled the blankets up. I brought them up and I said, "Tommy," I said, it's got to be something going on here. He goes, well, I don't know what to tell you. I said, well, I'm going to tell you something. I said, I'm going to get on the phone, and I'm going to get a priest in here, and I'm going to get this house blessed. So I called up Brother James, and he came out with Sister Rita, and he blessed every single room in my house. And he said a prayer, and we all said a prayer. About a week later, it started right back up again. But this time, it got louder. Going down into the basement, that's one place I hate going. You could just feel that, you know, there's somebody else in that room with you. And it's very uncomfortable. Going down into the basement, that's one place I hate going. You could just feel that, you know, there's somebody else in that room with you. And it's very uncomfortable. I went down, put a load of laundry in, and my washer and dryer are pretty, you know, close together. And then we have an exercise area where Tom works out. And I didn't feel alone. It was the creepiest feeling that came about me. And then the air, it just right downstairs got right chilly. And it was just a chill that went behind me. For some unknown reason, I turned towards the ball. And lo and behold, there it was. It was the man. It was a distinct man. I was in shock. I think that's the best way to put it. Because when you see something that you're not expecting, this will really throw it into you. I tell you, look, I didn't know what to do. I just stood and just looked. I stared. It's a feeling that comes over you that is almost, you can't describe it. It's like, what do you do? Where do you which way do you run? So believe you me, you wanted to see somebody run up the steps quick. I must have done 2 at a time, but I made it up. They're really stirring up, a problem over there with, all this drilling. That's it's got to be causing this. I'd like my house to return to the way it was. I don't like going around corners and seeing surprises. It does, it gets you very nervous, what's around the next corner. And I don't like it. I want my house back. That's what I want.
Susan hoped the priest's cleansing would return her house to normal. Our experts can't be sure why it failed, but it's possible the priest was addressing what he thought were demonic spirits. Ghosts that aren't evil might not leave simply because the requests were not directed at them. Like Dan's ghosts, Susan's may just be curious and confused. Susan is not alone in her belief that disturbing graves stirs up trouble. There are many reports of paranormal activity when new houses are built near First Nations burial grounds. Ancient Chinese tradition dictates that cemeteries are left unmanicured for fear of disturbing the dead. In fact, the tomb of the ancient philosopher Confucius is a mound in a cemetery overgrown with trees, bushes, and grass. The traditional Chinese know what Dan and Susan merely suspect. that if you disturb the dead just might end up disturbing you.
There's influences that shape us, basically, and I really think this ghost experience was a thing of wonder. I think if a grave was disturbed, my personal belief is if something like that happened, it may be cause for a paranormal event to occur. And I think there's a strong correlation given the history of this area and the destituteness of the destitute people that landed there, resulting in an activity that I witnessed as a child in this house.
I'll tell you, it's changed my life in more than one way. I definitely believe now that there is life after death. Nothing has harmed me. I'm very lucky to say that. So I'd like them to just, leave and be at peace, and so we can both be happy.